The campfire crackled in the darkness of Nexer 7. It was not a real fire. It was a hologram that gave light and warmth to the soldiers who sat around it. But it felt real enough for the men and women who would face death in the morning. The camp held 200 soldiers. Half of them were human. The other half were Valorian. The Valorians were tall and proud. Their skin was pale blue, and their eyes glowed like distant stars. They had ruled galactic warfare for 3,000 years. No species had ever matched them in combat, until the humans came. Private James Chen was telling a story. His voice was low and his eyes were wide. The other human soldiers leaned in close to listen. They had heard this story before. Every human had. But there was something special about hearing it on a night before battle. The werewolf moved through the village like a shadow, James said. It killed 12 men before the hunter found it. He used a silver blade. Only silver could pierce its heart. Lieutenant Thorin of the Valorian Guard laughed loudly. His laughter echoed across the camp. Other Valorians joined him. Their voices mixed together in a wave of mockery. "You humans are fascinating," Thorin said. He shook his head slowly. "You have traveled across the stars. You have built weapons that can crack planets. And yet you still believe in monsters that hide in the dark." James stopped talking. His face turned red with embarrassment. "These are just stories," another human soldier said quietly. "We tell them to pass the time." "They are more than stories to you," Thorin replied. He stood up and walked closer to the humans. "I have studied your species. Your entire history is filled with these tales. Vampires, demons, dragons, creatures that make no scientific sense. You are a species still haunted by imaginary shadows." Some of the humans looked angry. Others looked away. They were used to alien species looking down on them. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were still considered young and primitive by many. But one human did not look, embarrassed or angry. Commander Kira Vance sat at the edge of the firelight. She was a small woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She wore the black uniform of Earth Special Command. On her chest were more medals than most soldiers earned in a lifetime. Kira Vance was a legend. Every soldier in the galaxy knew her name. She had held the breach of Talonine alone for 16 hours. She had killed a Drakari Hive Queen with nothing but a combat knife. She had walked into battles that should have been impossible and walked out alive. She had not spoken all night. She simply sat and listened and watched. He turned to face her with a smile. "Surely you do not believe in these children's tales. You are the greatest warrior humanity has ever produced. You must know that monsters are not real." The camp grew quiet. Everyone wanted to hear what the legendary commander would say. Kira looked up slowly. Her eyes met Thorin's. There was no fear in her gaze. There was no embarrassment. There was something else. Something that made Thorin's smile fade just a little. "They are not stories," Kira said. Her voice was calm and cold. "They are records." Thorin blinked. "I do not understand." "Every myth humanity has ever told," Kira continued, "is based on something real. Something we fought. Something we survived." The Valorians laughed again, but this time the laughter was nervous. There was something in the commander's voice that made them uncomfortable. "With respect, Commander," Thorin said, "that is impossible. We have scanned your planet. We have studied your history. There are no creatures like the ones in your stories." "Not anymore," Kira replied. "We killed them. Or we drove them away. That is what the stories are really about. They are not fairy tales to frighten children. They are warnings, instructions. They tell us what works against things that should not exist." Thorin shook his head. "This is superstition. Nothing more," Kira did not argue. She simply reached into her jacket and pulled out a small data pad. She tapped the screen a few times. Then she held it up for Thorin to see. On the screen was a file marked with symbols that no Valorian had ever seen before. The classification code was written in a language older than any human nation. One word stood out in bright red letters: Prometheus. "What is this?" Thorin asked. "The oldest military files in human history," Kira said. They go back 10,000 years. Long before we had writing, long before we had cities, these records were passed down through memory and blood until we finally had the technology to store them properly. What do they contain? Kira stood up. She was shorter than every Valorian in the camp, but somehow she seemed larger than all of them. Tomorrow we enter the hollows, she said. The tunnels beneath the Drakari hive. Command thinks this will be a simple clearing operation. Kill the bugs. Destroy the nest. Go home. She looked around at the soldiers. Human and Valorian alike. Command is wrong. The silence that followed was heavy. Even the holographic fire seemed to grow dim. 3 scouting teams have entered the hollows in the past month, Kira continued. None of them came back. The Drakari did not kill them. Something else did. Something that lives in the dark. Something that humanity has fought before. Thorin stepped closer. What are you saying, Commander? Kira held out the datapad to him. I am saying that you should read these files tonight, Lieutenant. Every word. Every warning. Every instruction on how to kill things that do not die easily. Thorin took the datapad. His hands were steady, but his eyes showed doubt. Why? He asked, why should I believe any of this? Kira turned and began walking toward her tent. She stopped at the edge of the darkness and looked back over her shoulder. Because what lives down in the hollows is something we have met before, she said. 10,000 years ago, it came to Earth. It killed millions of our people. We were primitive then. We had no technology. No starships. No plasma weapons. She paused. The firelight cast strange shadows across her face. We beat it anyway. We drove it away with silver and salt and fire. We made it fear us. And tomorrow, Lieutenant, you are going to learn why the monsters in our stories are always afraid of humans. She disappeared into the darkness. Thorin looked down at the datapad in his hands. The Prometheus files glowed on the screen. Thousands of pages of information. Images, diagrams, instructions. He began to read around the campfire. No one told any more stories that night. The humans checked their weapons in silence. And for the first time, the Valorians did not laugh at them. Something had changed. Something was coming, and deep beneath the ground. In tunnels that had never seen light, something ancient opened its eyes and smiled. It had waited so long. The humans were finally coming back. The entrance to the hollows looked like a wound in the earth. It was a massive hole that dropped straight down into endless darkness. No light reached the bottom. No sound came from below. Commander Kira Vance stood at the edge and stared into the black. Behind her, 100 soldiers prepared to descend. 50 humans, 50 Valorians, the best warriors from 2 species. Lieutenant Thorin walked up beside her. His face was pale. He had not slept all night. The Prometheus files had kept him reading until dawn. I finished the files, he said quietly. I do not know what to believe. Kira nodded slowly. You will believe soon enough, the descent began. The soldiers moved down through the tunnels using ropes and anti-gravity packs. The walls were made of ancient stone covered in strange markings. The Drakari had dug these tunnels. But the markings were older than the Drekkar. Much older as they went deeper. Thorin noticed something strange about the human soldiers. They were carrying equipment he had never seen before. Not just plasma rifles and energy shields. They carried blades made of silver. They carried grenades filled with salt. They wore necklaces of iron around their throats. What is all this? Thorin asked a human sergeant named Maria Santos. Maria checked her silver blade without looking up. Tools, she said. Old tools. The kind that never stop working. Plasma fire can destroy anything, Thorin said. Why would you need primitive weapons? Maria finally looked at him. Her eyes were serious. Because some things do not care about plasma fire. Some things laugh at your technology, but they never laugh at silver. The squad reached the bottom of the hollows. The tunnels spread out in every direction like the roots of a dead tree. The air was cold and wet and smelled like something rotting. Kira raised her hand. Everyone stopped. UV lights on, she ordered. Nobody moves alone. Stay in groups of 5. If you see something that does not look right, do not shoot first. Call it out. Some of these things are fast. Faster than your trigger finger. The Valorians exchanged confused looks. UV lights. Why would they need ultraviolet light in a combat zone? But the humans did not question the order. They activated small devices on their shoulders. Pale purple light spilled out and mixed with the darkness. The march continued. They found the first body after 20 minutes. It was a Drukhari soldier. The insectoid alien was 7 feet tall with armor-like skin that could stop most bullets. The Drukhari were fierce warriors. They had conquered 100 worlds. This one was dead. But there were no wounds on its body. No burns. No cuts. No signs of battle at all. Thorin knelt down and scanned the body with his equipment. His face went white. "It is empty," he whispered. "What do you mean empty?" another Valorian asked. "I mean empty. The shell is intact, but everything inside is gone. Organs, blood, muscle, everything. Something drained it completely." Kira walked past without stopping. "There will be more." She was right. They found dozens of bodies as they moved deeper. Hundreds. All of them empty. All of them drained. The Drukhari had sent thousands of soldiers into these tunnels. None of them had survived. What could do this? Thorin asked. His voice was shaking now. What could kill so many warriors without leaving a mark? Kira stopped walking. She turned to face the squad. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were hard. 10,000 years ago, she began, something came to Earth. We do not know where it came from. We do not know why it chose our world, but it brought others with it, creatures that fed on life itself. They did not eat flesh. They consumed essence, energy, the thing that makes a living being alive. She pointed at the empty Drukhari shell nearby. Dast. They left behind only husks, empty containers. Our ancestors called them many names. Vampires, wraiths, shadow walkers, wendigos. Every culture had stories about them. Every culture learned to fear them. Those are myths, Thorin said desperately. Stories to explain disease. Natural deaths. There must be a scientific explanation, as Kira replied. The explanation is that they are real. They come from a dimension we call the void, a place where the laws of physics do not work the same way, a place of darkness and hunger. And somehow, the Drukhari woke them up when they dug these tunnels. A sound echoed through the darkness. It was not loud. It was more like a whisper, but it came from everywhere at once. From above, from below. From inside the walls, the soldiers raised their weapons. The Valorians activated their targeting systems, but there was nothing to aim at. The darkness was empty. Thermal scan shows nothing, a Valorian soldier reported. Visual scan shows nothing. Motion sensors are clear. Kira pulled a flare from her belt. It was not a normal flare. It glowed with intense ultraviolet light. They do not show up on your scanners, she said. They exist between dimensions, half here, half in the void. Your technology cannot see them. She activated the flare and threw it into the air. Purple light exploded through the tunnel. And in that light, everyone saw the truth. They were surrounded. The creatures clung to the walls and ceiling. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. They were tall and thin, with limbs that bent in too many places. Their skin was gray and stretched tight over bones that looked wrong. Their faces had no features except for mouths. Wide mouths filled with teeth that never ended. They had been there the whole time, watching, waiting. A Valorian soldier screamed and fired his plasma rifle. The bolt of energy passed through the creature without doing any damage. The creature did not even react. Hold your fire. Kira shouted. Plasma does nothing. Use the silver. Use the salt. Stay in the UV light. The creatures began to move. They shifted and twisted like smoke given form. Their mouths opened wider. That whispering sound grew louder. It was not a language. It was hunger given voice. Kira drew her silver blade. The metal gleamed in the purple light. Nobody move, she said quietly. They hunt motion first. They sense fear second. Control your breathing. Control your heart. Show them nothing. Thorin stood frozen. His weapon was useless. His training was useless. Everything he knew about warfare meant nothing here. What do we do? He whispered. Kira's eyes moved slowly across the creatures. They were getting closer, testing the edges of the light, waiting for someone to break. We do what humans have always done, she replied. We survive. We adapt. And we make them remember why they should be afraid of us. A creature lunged from the darkness. Kira moved faster than should have been possible. Her silver blade cut through the thing's neck. It screamed a sound that hurt to hear. Black blood sprayed across the stone. The other creatures pulled back. Just for a moment. Just long enough. Run, Kira ordered. Back the way we came? Stay in the light. Move now. The squad began to retreat. The creatures followed. The hunt had begun, and somewhere deeper in the hollows, something much older and much more terrible felt the disturbance. It rose from its ancient sleep. It remembered the taste of human fear. It remembered the war it had lost so long ago. The children of Earth had returned. This time, the first shadow would not let them escape. The retreat was chaos. Soldiers ran through the dark, tunnels with creatures hunting them from every shadow. The UV lights pushed back the darkness, but they could not cover everything. The creatures moved through the gaps. They grabbed soldiers and pulled them into the black. Screams filled the air. Human screams. Valorian screams. The sounds of warriors who had never known fear, learning what terror truly meant. Commander. Kira Vance moved through the chaos like she belonged there. Her silver blade flashed again and again. Black blood splashed across the walls. She had killed 6 creatures already. Maybe 7. She was not counting. Keep moving. She shouted. Do not stop. Do not look back. A Valorian soldier stumbled and fell. A creature dropped from the ceiling and landed on his chest. Its mouth opened wide. It was going to feed Sergeant Maria Santos through a salt grenade. The small device exploded and covered the creature in white powder. The thing screamed and released the Valorian. Its skin burned where the salt touched it. It fled back into the darkness. Maria pulled the Valorian to his feet. Move, she ordered. That will not stop it for long. The squad reached a wider chamber. Kira called a halt. They needed a moment to regroup. To count their losses, 20 soldiers were gone. Taken by the creatures, 12 humans. 8 Valorians. The survivors pressed together in a tight circle with UV lights pointing outward. Lieutenant Thorin was shaking. His plasma rifle hung useless at his side. He had fired it a dozen times. Not once had it done anything. This is impossible, he said. His voice cracked with fear. This cannot be real. Kira walked over to him. She grabbed his arm and forced him to look at her. It is real, she said firmly. Accept it. Your disbelief will not save you. Your technology will not save you. The only thing that will save you is doing exactly what I tell you, Thorin demanded. How do you fight something that your weapons cannot touch? Kira released his arm. She looked around at the surviving soldiers. Human and Valorian alike. All of them were afraid. All of them needed answers. 10,000 years ago, she began, these things invaded Earth. We call it the first incursion. Humanity was young then. We had no cities. No technology. We were prey animals trying to survive in a world that wanted to kill us. The creatures whispered in the darkness around them, but they did not attack.
Not yet.
They were listening to... The Voidborn came through rifts between dimensions. They fed on us. They hunted us. They treated us like cattle. By all logic, we should have been wiped out. We were weak. We were primitive. We had nothing, Kira smiled. It was a cold smile, a dangerous smile. But we had one thing they did not expect. We could adapt. We could learn, and we never gave up. She held up her silver blade. The metal caught the purple light and gleamed. Our ancestors discovered that certain things hurt these creatures. Silver burns them. Salt disrupts their physical form. Iron blocks their movement between dimensions. UV light forces them to become solid and vulnerable. Running water weakens their connection to the void. Thorin stared at the blade. But why? Why would such simple things affect beings from another dimension? We do not know, Kira admitted. Maybe these elements exist differently in the void. Maybe they interfere with whatever energy allows these creatures to exist. The science does not matter. What matters is that it works. A human corporal named David spoke up. Tell them the rest, Commander. Tell them about the old blood. Kira was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. The war against the Voidborn lasted for generations, she continued. Thousands of years. During that time, something happened to the humans who fought them. We changed. We evolved. The constant exposure to void energy altered our genetics. She touched her chest. Some humans developed abilities. We could sense the creatures. We could hurt them more easily than others. We could resist their feeding. Our ancestors called us different names. Monster hunters, shamans, warriors of light. The modern term is old blood.
Albus.
Thorin's eyes widened. You are one of them.
Yes. The ability passes through bloodlines.
It grows weaker with each generation, but it never disappears completely. I am a direct descendant of the hunters who drove the Voidborn from Earth. That is why Command sent you, Maria said. They knew what was down here. Kira nodded. Earth Command has known about the Void for centuries. We've been preparing for the creatures to return. We did not expect it to happen like this. We did not expect them to be waiting on an alien world at the edge of known space. The whispers in the darkness grew louder. The creatures were getting restless. But they are here now, Kira said. And we will do what we have always done. We will fight. We will survive. And we will win. A Valorian officer named Sareth spoke up. How can you be so certain? These things slaughtered the Drakari. They are killing us. What makes you think we can defeat them? Kira looked at her with eyes that had seen horrors beyond imagination. 'Cause we did it before. Naked and afraid, and armed with nothing but sticks and stones. We broke them. We made them flee our world. We made them fear us so much that they hid in the darkness of space for 10,000 years. She raised her blade. Today we are not naked. Today we are not afraid. Today we have weapons and training and knowledge that our ancestors could never dream of. If they could win with so little, then we can win with so much more. The soldiers straightened. Human and Valorian alike. Something shifted in the air. Fear was still there, but it was joined by something else. Determination, defiance. Then the creatures stopped whispering. The silence was worse than the sound. It was heavy and thick and wrong. Kira felt something in her blood. Something ancient. A warning passed down through countless generations. Something is coming, she said quietly. The ground began to shake. Dust fell from the ceiling. The creatures in the darkness pulled back. They were not retreating. They were making room. A presence filled the tunnel. It was not a physical thing. It was a weight in the mind, a pressure against the soul. It was old and vast and hungry beyond measure. A voice spoke. It did not use sound. It simply appeared in their thoughts, like poison poured into water. Children of Earth, you have returned. Kira stepped forward. Her blade was raised. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. Show yourself, she said. Face us. Laughter filled their minds. Cold laughter. Ancient laughter. You carry the old blood. I can taste it. Your ancestors were the ones who hurt me, the ones who drove me from your world. I've waited so long to repay that debt. The darkness at the end of the tunnel began to move. It twisted and grew and took shape. A form emerged. It was massive. It was terrible. It was the source of every nightmare humanity had ever dreamed. The first shadow. It had awakened and it remembered everything. The first shadow was not a creature. It was darkness given form. It was hunger given thought. It rose from the depths of the tunnel like a mountain of living night. Its shape changed constantly. One moment it had 1,000 eyes. The next moment it had none. It was everything terrible and nothing at all. The soldiers stood frozen. Even the bravest among them could not move. The presence of the shadow pressed down on their minds like a weight that crushed all hope. Ow! 10,000 years the shadow spoke into their thoughts. 10,000 years I have wandered the void between stars, feeding on lesser beings, growing stronger, waiting for the day I would find your kind again. Commander Kira Vance did not run. She did not freeze. She stepped forward with her silver blade raised high. You ran from us once, she said. Her voice was steady. You can run again, the shadow laughed. The sound shattered stone and made blood drip from the ears of those who heard it. I did not run, child of hunters. I was cast out. Your ancestors used a weapon against me, a ritual of sacrifice and blood. They burned their own lives to seal the rift and trap me in the void. The shadow moved closer. Its form towered over the soldiers like a wave about to crash. But there are no rituals here, no sacred ground, no circle of hunters ready to give their lives. You are far from your home, far from your power. Here you are, just meet. Kira did not back away. Her mind raced through the Prometheus files she had memorized years ago. The first shadow was right. The ritual that banished it required preparation, sacred sites, multiple hunters with old blood. She had none of those things, but she had something else. She had soldiers who refused to die. She had warriors who had faced impossible odds before. And she had the one thing that had always saved humanity, the ability to adapt. You made a mistake, Kira said quietly. The shadow paused. What mistake? You waited too long. Kira smiled grimly. 10,000 years ago, we were alone. We had no allies, no technology, no understanding of what we faced. Today is different. She looked back at her soldiers. Human and Valorian standing together, different species united by blood and battle. Today we are not alone. Today we understand you. And today we have something our ancestors never had. What is that? The shadow asked. Friends. Lieutenant Thorin stepped forward. His legs were shaking, but he forced himself to move. He stood beside Kira with the silver blade she had given him held tight in his grip. The commander is right, he said. My people have laughed at humans for years. We thought you were weak. We thought your stories were foolish. We were wrong. He looked at the shadow with defiance burning in his glowing eyes. Your kind never invaded our world. We never learned to fight you. But humans did. They learned. They survived. They won. And now they are going to teach us how to do the same. Other soldiers began to move. First, the humans. Then the Valorians. They formed a line behind Kira and Thorin. Silver blades and salt grenades ready. UV lights blazing against the darkness. The shadow's form rippled with something that might have been surprise. You would die for these humans? It asked Thorin. You would throw away your life for a species you barely know? I would die fighting beside warriors, Thorin replied. And these humans are the greatest warriors I have ever seen. Kira felt something warm in her chest. Pride, hope. The same feelings her ancestors must have felt when they faced this creature. The first time. There is a way, she said suddenly. The words came from somewhere deep inside her. From the old blood that connected her to hunters long dead, the ritual. It does not require a sacred site. It requires anchors, living beings with the will to stand against the darkness. She turned to face her soldiers. The ritual needs 3 points. 3 warriors forming a triangle. They hold the creature in place while someone with old blood activates the seal. It burns the connection between our dimension and the void. It forces everything from the other side back where it came from. What happens to the anchors? Maria asked. Kira was silent. They die, Thorin said quietly. He had read the Prometheus files. He knew the cost. The ritual uses their life force to power the seal. The soldiers looked at each other. Fear and determination mixed on their faces. I will be one anchor, Kira said. I will need volunteers. No, Thorin grabbed her arm. You carry the old blood. You are the only one who can activate the seal. If you die as an anchor, then we all die." He was right. Kira knew he was right, but she could not ask others to sacrifice themselves. "I will be an anchor," Maria said. She stepped forward without hesitation. "I have been fighting since I was 16 years old. This is a good death." "And I will be the second," Thorin said. Everyone stared at him. A Valorian. Volunteering to die for a human ritual? "You do not have to do this," Kira said. "This is not your fight." Thorin shook his head. "You said it yourself. Humanity is not alone anymore. If this creature escapes, it will consume the galaxy. My people. Your people. Everyone." He gripped his silver blade tighter. "I laughed at your stories. Let me make that right." The shadow watched this exchange with growing anger. Its form twisted and grew darker. "Enough of this," it snarled. "You cannot perform the ritual. You do not have the strength. You do not have the knowledge. You will fail, and I will feed on your souls for eternity." Kira closed her eyes. She reached deep inside herself, past her training, past her memories, down to the blood that connected her to every hunter who would ever live, and she found them waiting for her. Generations of warriors, men and women who had faced the darkness and won. They stood in her mind like an army of ghosts. They spoke words she had never learned. They showed her movements she had never practiced. She opened her eyes. They glowed with silver light. "You underestimate us," she said. Her voice echoed with 1,000 others. "You always have. That is why you lost before. That is why you will lose again." She turned to her soldiers. "Get to the surface. All of you. When the ritual begins, everything in these tunnels will be pulled back to the void. You have 5 minutes." The soldiers hesitated. "Go." Kira shouted. "That is an order." They began to run. But before they left the chamber, something unexpected happened. A human private stopped. Then another. Then 3 Valorians. "We are not leaving," the private said. "If you need more anchors, then take us. Stand together," a Valorian added. To the end, more soldiers stopped. 10, 20, 30. They formed a circle around Kira and Thorin and Maria, human and Valorian, shoulder to shoulder. The shadow screamed with rage. It lunged forward with claws of pure darkness. But the soldiers held their ground, and Commander. Kira Vance began to speak words that had not been heard for 10,000. Years the ritual had begun. The words flowed. From Kira like water from a broken dam. They were ancient words. Words that existed before language. Words that had been carved into human blood through generations of suffering and sacrifice. Silver light poured from her eyes and mouth. It spread across the ground in patterns that hurt to look at. The patterns connected to Maria and Thorin, who stood at 2 points of an invisible triangle. Their bodies began to glow as the ritual claimed them as anchors. The first shadow attacked with all its fury. Claws of darkness slashed through the air. Tendrils of void energy whipped toward the soldiers. It was fighting for its existence, and it knew it. But the soldiers fought back. 30 warriors stood in a circle around the ritual. They held their UV lights high. They threw salt grenades at every tendril that came close. They slashed with silver blades at anything that broke through. Human and Valorian, working as one. A Valorian named Sareth fell. A shadow tendril pierced her chest and drained her in seconds. A human corporal named David took her place. Seconds later, he fell too. Another soldier stepped forward. They were dying, one by one, but they did not stop. "You cannot win," the shadow roared. Its voice cracked with desperation. "I am eternal. I am infinite. I am the darkness that existed before the first star was born." Kira's voice rose above the chaos. The ancient words grew louder. The silver patterns on the ground blazed brighter. "You are nothing," she replied. "You are a parasite, a leech that feeds on beings greater than yourself, and we are done being your food." Maria screamed as the ritual pulled energy from her body. Blue fire erupted from her skin. She was burning alive from the inside. But she did not move from her anchor point. "Hold it together, Santos," Thorin called out. He was suffering too. His blue skin had turned black where the ritual touched him. His glowing eyes were flickering like dying flames. Just a little longer. The shadow gathered itself for one final assault. It pulled all its power together. Every smaller creature in the tunnels was absorbed into its form. It grew larger, darker, more terrible than ever. If I die, then I will take you all with me, it screamed. Every last one of you. It struck. The wave of darkness hit the circle of soldiers like a hammer. Bodies flew through the air. UV lights shattered. For one terrible moment, the silver patterns on the ground flickered, but they did not go out. The remaining soldiers crawled back to their positions. Broken bones. Bleeding wounds. It did not matter. They formed the circle again. Smaller now. Only 15 remained. But 15 was enough. Kira spoke the final words of the ritual. The air itself seemed to crack. A rift appeared in the center of the chamber. Not a rift to the void. A rift to somewhere else. Somewhere bright. Somewhere that the shadow could not look at without screaming.
Oh, the shadow wailed.
Not again. I will not go back. But it had no choice. The rift pulled at the shadow like a drain pulling water. Its massive form began to stretch and tear. Pieces of living darkness were ripped away and sucked into the light. Maria collapsed. Her body was empty now. Everything that made her who she was had been burned away to power the seal. She died with a smile on her face. Thorin fell to his knees. He was still alive, but barely. The ritual had taken almost everything from him. Kira stood alone in the center of the patterns. Silver fire surrounded her. Her ancestors stood with her in spirit. Thousands of hunters reaching across time to finish what they had started 10,000 years ago. Go back to the darkness, she commanded, and remember this moment. Remember that humans found you. Remember that humans beat you. Remember that no matter how far you run or how long you hide, we will always come for you. We are humanity. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And we never stop fighting. The shadow screamed one last time. It was a sound of hatred and fear and defeat. Then it was gone. Pulled through the rift. Banished back to whatever hell had spawned it. The rift closed. The silver. Patterns faded. Kira collapsed. Silence filled the chamber. The smaller shadow creatures were gone. Destroyed when the shadow was banished. The only sounds were the breathing of survivors and the dripping of blood on stone. Thorin crawled to where Kira had fallen. She was alive, but barely. Her body had been pushed far beyond its limits. The old blood had protected her, but even that had nearly not been enough. Commander, he whispered. Commander, can you hear me? Kira's eyes opened. They were normal now. No silver glow. Just tired human eyes. Did we win? She asked. Thorin laughed. It was a broken sound, filled with pain and relief. Yes, he said. We won. Kira smiled weakly. Good. Now get me out of this hole. I hate caves. It took 3 days for rescue teams to reach them. 3 days of waiting in darkness with dwindling supplies and wounded soldiers, but they survived. 15 warriors from a force of 100. Humans and Valorians bound together by blood and sacrifice. When they emerged into the sunlight of Nexer 7, they were greeted as heroes. News of what had happened spread across the galaxy. The story of how two species faced an ancient evil together. The story of how human myths proved to be warnings from the past. 2 weeks later, Lieutenant Thorin stood before the Valorian High Command. He was still recovering from his wounds. Scars covered his body where the ritual had burned him, but he stood straight and tall. I request formal authorization, he said, to establish a joint training program between Valorian and human forces. The High Commander frowned. Training in what exactly? Human mythology, Thorin replied. Combat techniques, weapon designs. Everything contained in the Prometheus files. You want us to study fairy tales? I want us to study survival. Thorin's voice was hard. The galaxy is much darker than we knew. There are things hiding in the black spaces between stars. Things we never imagined. Things we are not prepared to fight. He paused. But the humans are prepared. They have been fighting these battles for 10,000 years. They have won. Again and again. They have knowledge that could save countless lives, and they are willing to share it. The High Commander was silent for a long moment. Why would they share such power? He finally asked, "Because that is what humans do." Thorin smiled slightly. They face the darkness. They learn how to beat it. And then they light fires so others can see the way. The training program was approved 3 days later. On a small moon at the edge of Valorian space, a new facility was built. Human instructors arrived to teach ancient combat techniques to alien warriors. Silver weapons were forged. Salt grenades were manufactured. UV light systems were installed on every Valorian warship, and at night the soldiers gathered around campfires. Human and Valorians sitting together. The humans told their stories. The myths of Earth, the tales of monsters and heroes, the warnings passed down through generations. This time, nobody laughed. This time, everybody listened. And somewhere in the darkness between dimensions, the first shadow nursed its wounds and remembered. It remembered the pain. It remembered the defeat. It remembered the creatures who had beaten it twice. It would heal. It would grow strong again. It would return, but it would be afraid, because the humans would be waiting. They always were.